Hi, today we have Steen here with us from Wasp Construction. Sean is our superintendent on Rivr Lofts, 5th in downtown Fort Lauderdale. He basically manages the whole construction process from ground up. We're almost at the finish right now. And I invited him here a little bit to talk about his career path, about advice he has in investing in real estate, about his experience with Rivr Lofts, with the Moderno team. And Sean, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit here.
So I'm Sean, like Daron said. I've been with Moss now I'm on my 9th year. So I grew up in Georgia. I moved down to South Florida about 12 years ago. Grew up in Georgia, went to school at Auburn University, studied construction management and economics while I was there. Growing up, I kind of always wanted to get into building. I always, worked with my hands, things like that. I always wanted to be a home builder. Where I grew up, I was kind of a rural area, and it was, home building was the big thing. It wasn't multifamily and high-rise and commercial construction. When I went to school, we obviously, learned more about commercial construction, but I always really wanted to build houses and custom homes and things like that. And that was always really my goal. When I got out of school, my wife is from Fort Lauderdale, so she had moved back down here, and we've been married now. We're on 9 years this year. Got 2 little kids. So her whole family's here, and nieces and nephews and everything. So I moved back down here. Kind of didn't really know anybody. So I started working with a company doing like the home flips and renovations like 2012, trying to figure out what I wanted to do and trying to build relationships and those types of things. I ended up getting an opportunity with Moss. We were building a 24-story building in downtown Miami. They had a need for somebody that was just young and wanted to learn and
What was your first job there, first position they gave you?
So I was an assistant superintendent.
Assistant.
Yep, so I was assistant superintendent, and what I did when I was there, when I originally came on, what they needed was just somebody that could come in and manage inspections and inspectors and things like that. And we had just topped out the building when I got hired, and I came in and I started off by running the interiors of an apartment building. It was comparable size. I think it was 370 units, and it had some townhouses and things like that. So I took on the interiors of the building and building the apartments and that stuff. And then from there, kind of took on a little bit more. So the big piece of that was just, they were willing to give me an opportunity and a chance, and you got to be willing to come in and learn and listen and take it all in. From there,
How old were you when you started?
Moss was 9 years, so 27.
27 years old.
Yeah. So I was like 27. I had just gotten married, and we were just kind of getting started out, my wife and I.
She was paying good for it?
Yeah, of course. No, they're the best. Well, the reason they're so successful is they take care of their employees, they treat us well, and it's a good place to work. So, but also they're willing to give people chances and opportunities. I think construction has historically been a business that's, based off of experience, and it's a lot of older guys, especially in my position, that have just came up through the trades, and now it's starting to transition more where people are coming out of college and doing it, and we recruit a lot out of college, and so it's a kind of a different demographic of people that are managing the site, but it's a good thing. So we get opportunities like that. You just got to take them in and grasp them.
How long were you an assistant superintendent before you became a superintendent?
So I got hired in 2016. I want to say I became a superintendent in like 2019, 2020, somewhere around there.
For 3-4 years?
Yeah. So I went, after I finished that building, I was kind of the last man standing there, worked with the owner on like turnover and that type of stuff. I left there and I went to the Fort Lauderdale airport. We were building a big terminal for one of the airlines there, and I was there for a while, which is great experience, especially getting kind of diverse experience. But I went to the airport and I was there for a year and a half, something like that. And then from there I went and I built a cruise terminal. And then that's when I became superintendent. We had a big team really fast. It's a $100 million job. I think we built it in like 10 months. Then I stayed at the port for a little bit, and we did some big civil jobs and things like that. And then I ended up with you at Rivr Lofts.
Well,
So
you got screwed. So tell us a little bit, what's the responsibility of the job, superintendent? What exactly?
So-
I mean, I'll tell you one thing. My architect told me when I was debating, like Moss or some other company, and I said, "I'd like to choose. What do you think?" He said, "Listen, the most important thing that you're gonna get is who is the superintendent of the job, because he can make your life easy, and he can make your life a nightmare. And the quality of your superintendent is the most important." So luckily I had you. It was been a great experience. But explain to us, to all the other people, what exactly is a superintendent? What is he responsible for? I mean, like the big boss and the sign at the front of stuff, right?
yeah, so the superintendent, historically is just responsible for the physical construction, from what it takes to build a building, scheduling it, logistics, things like that. As like now, my position now is more of, I say everything's my responsibility now, between the office, the owner, the design team, the subcontractors, the site, my guys that are on the site. And I think that's kind of one of those things, how I was saying, it's changing a little bit. Is the old kind of adage was you were responsible from like the fence line in. To me, I don't believe in that. I think everything is my responsibility. But from a day-to-day perspective, it's the physical construction, it's the scheduling of everything, the making sure we're looking ahead to what's coming up. Obviously, when we get into it, the project startup is on the superintendent. How do we get started? How do we get out of the ground? Working through with the subcontractors and the design team on things of how we got to do that. Some coordination type stuff on how we do it. Things, whether we got to, lower things or raise things like that, so we can get the building out and get moving.
How many people on your team underneath you? There's a whole bunch of them running around all day. How much you need?
We have more right now because we have interns.
Right.
So
typically without anything.
So like on this job, we have, as far as the field staff, we have 3 guys. So me plus 3 guys, really 4, because I have another guy that's our safety person and that. And I mean, all of our projects we have full-time safety representative on. But right now I have 2 senior field engineers and then 1 other superintendent. And then obviously I have my boss, who you met, Andy, who I work with and we bounce things off of, and he makes sure that we're staying doing what we're supposed to do.
Or you're dedicated to one project, and he's like involved in 1 or 2 or 3 projects.
Yeah, correct. So really big jobs, you'd have, obviously we have bigger teams, for whatever it takes, but.
Is it a big headache? It's a lot of construction, so many things go wrong, and so much coordination, and so many subcontractors that plan and details. It's a huge.
It's
very cool. I gotta tell you, every time I come to the office, you're very cool. You don't seem stressed, but when I think about it now, I think, wow, what a stress! I would die.
So it's
when dealing with all those coordinations and details.
So there's that part of it. That's it can be stressful. Then there's the part of it that I look at that I'm responsible for the entire project, and you're responsible for a lot of lives. I mean, construction's super dangerous, and one, you got to make sure you're putting your subcontractors in a position to be successful, and then you got to be making sure those people are going home the same way they came in that day. So it's a lot of stress. The way I look at it and kind of the way I handle myself is that there's nothing we can't fix, and there's nothing that's so serious worth getting worked up about. We can work through anything. And a problem's a problem, whether you're upset about it or whether you're not. So it's not that hard to navigate through it calmly.
It's really like a leadership position, really, actually. And Moss likes to define leaders and talk about a lot, but basically you're the leader there in the whole construction or in the home profit.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously there's, everybody's a leader, right? Because everybody kind of.
So everyone is a leader, or there's one leader?
So everybody's a leader. I think though, when you look at it though, like guys that are just in the field all day, I mean, they're leaders to the subcontractors and the guys that are physically putting work in place, and they have to manage that, and they got to put those guys in successful places. And And then kind of as you keep progressing up, you're still leading those people, but you're leading in kind of a next level and a next level. You know, we have Luis on the job as our project manager. Luis is just as much of a leader as I am. I think we complement each other in a way that, you know, he controls like the office and that type of thing, and then I have to make sure I'm communicating with him so that what they're doing aligns with what we need to do in the field.
Right.
You know, I'm schedule oriented and quality oriented, and then trying to make sure that we're putting ourselves in the right position. Like now, you know, as we're getting to the end of the project, all of the kind of hard work and stuff that we've done is to put us in a successful position now, which is, you know, 18 months after we broke out of the ground. So those things that, you know, where my focus is I tell everybody that kind of they have a lens, right? So like you guys that are just coming in that are entry level type positions, their foresight's, you know, day to day or 3 days or a week, and then hopefully they can get that out in their 2 weeks, right, you know, looking. And then the next guy is, you know, he's day to day, but he's still a week, but he's also a month out. And I try to capture all that, and I'm, you know, 90 days out, a year out to make sure everything we're doing today aligns with what I need to be doing, you know, 6 months from now. And all those decisions, and if you make mistakes or bad decisions early on, then you end up kind of having to figure it out at the end, or when you get to it, and it happens.
So your assistant superintendent, the next one after it will be what?
This senior superintendent, and then there's general superintendents. So that's Andy's the general superintendent. Okay. The general superintendents are typically who you deal with more like on the front end. They get involved a lot earlier, and especially through like logistics and scoping the project and scheduling. Like our baseline schedules typically go through those guys, and you know, there's.
Are you involved on the pre-con a little bit, on the pre-con projects?
Yeah, so if you have the opportunity, and if if you know what's coming next, you get that opportunity. General superintendents typically will be in. You know, pre-con's one of those a little bit like hairy things sometimes when it comes to operations guys versus our pre-con guys, because you have to have those guys got to be available to get in. It's a huge asset if you can, because we look at things way different than our pre-con department looks at. And you know, we see things, and we have our toolbox of lessons that we've learned on jobs. In a perfect world, you get that every time, and but it's not always perfect.
So you were surprised at the job, new things you learned?
There's always new things you learn.
You learn new things, the Rivr Lofts, there's no issues, no problem.
Yeah, it's we talk about it all the time. It's like like I just said, you take things, you put it in your toolbox. So that it's like, man, I'm gonna remember this on the next one. And a lot of that too. I mean, construction hasn't changed that much. I mean, codes change and things like that, but processes, you know, over the past however many years has stayed pretty consistent. But
Cloud is a bit slow in construction, right? Cloud really gone in so much.
So it's catching up, and it has caught up. I mean, we're going through a lot of things that we're starting to do with AI and things like that will really help. And then like we integrated Procore on this job. Right. That was kind of a big transition, because we were
Procore was like a little pad that you have all the information. You can walk on the construction, photos, bids, plans, you can just pull it anywhere.
It's pretty much just a database, and it operates on the computer. You can use it on an app, and it has all of our documents in it and drawings. And really, it's a way of ensuring that all of the information that we have, everybody has it. And there's no, you know, a lot of times if you get a revision or a design change, if you go through it from the old kind of paper copy, you got to get that into somebody's hand to make sure they see it. Whereas Procore and we used to use CMIC and things like that, it gives it out instantaneously.
Most companies use Procore? Is it already
I think a lot of them. And there's a lot of them. It's probably like the premier database for it now.
Sean, like Rivr Lofts, 26 months construction, 30 stories high. Give us a little bit the highlights of the basic stages that go into the construction, all the way from, you know, the pilings, the earthwork, and all the way to the finishes and getting a temporary certificate of occupancy. What would be the most basic steps?
So, you know, initially getting out of the ground is the big challenge between dewatering, getting your site survey in, all your control in for the piles.
Dewatering is a big issue in Florida, right? That's
Yeah.
something that other places don't have. It's a lot
Right.
of water.
Yeah, so I mean, we're at Rivr Lofts, finished floor elevations is at 7. During rainy seasons, our water table is at like a 1.5, and the biggest pile cap on Rivr Lofts was called an 81 PC, meaning it has 81 piles in it into a mat, concrete mat.
What's a pile? Explain to
So auger, typically, most everything in South Florida is built on auger cast piles. Auger cast piles is a drilling operation. They auger down to whatever your design depth is for your geotech engineer and structural engineer. So they drill, 80 feet or whatever they need to get into good load bearing soil.
okay? I always do it's like a table, legs that hold a table. Just go
Kinda.
down in the ground, and you have a lot of legs that go down and
Yeah.
go all the way to the rock.
Yeah, so
It
the
has a table that you can build the building top. Is that a?
more or less.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have your pile layouts come based off of where your columns are and your shear walls and your big
Where the weight is.
Yeah, so like the elevator shaft comes out of there. So like ours, the big pile cap was into the water table. So obviously it had to be dewatered so it's dry so you can waterproof it and put concrete in it.
Did we go for those piles?
I think our piles were like 81 to 85 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so they drill them. So they have a big auger on a crane. They drill it. Once they get to like what they call the tip elevation, means the bottom of the pile, they start pumping grout, and they pump it and they start retracting the auger. And then once they retract it, and the pile, I'm going to go kind of simplified with it. Once they retract it, and the grout's to the top, they drop a rebar cage in it. So it's whatever the pile diameter for the diameter, they drop it in.
Rebar with grout, which grout is like the pure concrete cement.
Without the aggregate.
Without that, right?
Yeah. So then
That combination of the legs that go down.
yeah. So then they
How many piles did we have in about 300 and something Rivr Lofts?
yeah, it was like just under 400.
400 legs that hold the building.
Correct.
That go all the way 80 feet.
Yeah. So the idea is that you get into firm bearing capacity, firm soil.
Right. Okay.
So after you get through that, and
How long is that usually? A few months?
it depends on just the quantity. I mean, those guys, they have a production rate that they kind of go off of, and it really depends off the design too, because you have different parameters like how close you can drill. But ideally, like for Rivr Lofts, you try to, I would think, 4 to 5 weeks of drilling to get out and get demobilized, and then get the site ready for excavation. So once you get through your piles, set up your dewatering. So you have everything dry, and then you start excavating the piles to start with your pile caps. So like a Rivr Lofts, the big piece, and on most jobs, as long as you can do it logistically, you want to go to your biggest one first to get it out of the ground. So ours was our core of the building, set on that one big pile cap.
Well, the core of the center of the building, the whole
Yeah.
ready the weight.
Yeah, so that's the
Stabilization, like
Rivr Lofts. You have 2 elevator shafts and then 2 stairwells that come up through the core.
the backbone of the building. Like,
Correct. So getting that up and getting that dewatered and trying to pour that as fast as you can. Obviously get your crane foundations in, because you've seen it at Rivr Lofts, it's a super tight site. So getting a tower crane up so you can access the whole site is critical.
Right.
So getting those 2 things poured, and then you start pouring all your other caps and start getting out of the ground. So once you get through that process and get start getting your pile caps in, you get out of the way, then you start going vertical. Obviously you have a permit. So we got
I remember you telling me that once we start going vertical, let's say we finish the parking, we finish the core, and then we're going, 8th floor, 9th floor. You told me that's easy because it's kind of repetitive.
Yeah.
You're just repeating yourself, bam, 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 going up. But we're you're like, okay, we're through the difficult part.
Yeah, so
the risky part, right?
For us and any building that's on a podium, so like the podium garage, once we got to the 7th floor is the transition to the tower. So that's like the meat and bones of the building. So that's when we had the barbecue for the guys, because it was almost like a mini top out party, because it's the hardest part. And once we got through there, everything is typical, the whole way up, and we start flying tables, and we get into a pour cycle. We were turning pretty much a floor a week.
That's fast, 4 a week.
Yeah.
Every week. I remember I took a lot of videos and photos and every
Yeah, so then from there, the big thing is just getting into sequence and getting everything follow behind with the masonry, with glass, so you can start building the inside. I think at the best we had, we did really well. We had, working deck, we had the reshores of the working deck, the next floor, and then once we got to the 50% floor, we would start the block. And then, you know, the floor below that, we had the block done. Then right below that, we had the glass. And then the floor below that, we started framing and doing all of our interior rough-ins. So it's kind of just, you get as much in place as fast as you
When
can.
you do the top off of the building, when the shell is, when you went reconstructed forward.
So when you pour your last structural deck, the highest point of the building, that's when you do it.
And that's like that's already a big relief. Now you're just working on the interior part, and that's supposedly, it's an easier part, less
No, it's definitely not easier. I mean, it's
workers on site.
When we have the most workers on site is right before top out. So when we're still doing structure and we're doing interiors, I think at our peak we were probably around like 250 guys. The shell contractor is the majority of that. And then when you're going through that pace, that's when you're kind of at your highest clip. But getting to the top out, one, it's super important because it's super dangerous. You know, we're flying stuff overhead with cranes and we're going really fast. But once you get to that point, it's almost like you're at the halfway point. So now you're on the downhill side and pushing through the interiors and getting the skin on the building so you can get the glass in, if you get power, you can start running air conditioning and all of those things that kind of make the building start living and breathing. That's what that sets off. And that's when it starts getting, you know.
So when do you think you're finishing with the Rivr Lofts, all the construction? Not when we get into sale, but when we're finishing, like in a month and a half?
Yeah, so I think, you know, ideally by the end of, we have all our work in place between this month and September, and then we're just going through inspections and those things, and that just takes time. I mean, the fire marshal comes and they want to walk every single floor and look at every single fire alarm device and those things. So if everything goes well, we have everything in, and then we're just racing to the finish line.
What was the biggest challenge you had? I mean, we had a lot of challenges getting out of the ground and a lot of problems. Some of them have to do with the market, shortages, the plans. We had staffing problems. I think you guys had a lot of changes. We had some changes, and so there's a lot of things going on. What would you say was your biggest challenge that you overcame during the construction period? Is it a yacht or not?
No. Okay, some days. Depends on the day. It depends on if you try to take me to lunch too. Right. To me, the biggest challenge we've had the whole time has been FPL. Even FPL at the beginning was a challenge, and then getting to where we could get power. I mean, we had issues at the beginning with materials, with grout, and then getting the building permit and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we can overcome those things because we can control it.
The FPL is the Florida Power and
Florida
Electric
Power
Company,
and Light, yeah.
And they have their own schedule, basically. People don't know, but
Yeah.
they're like a monopoly.
Yeah, I mean,
Get them there and
they don't work for anybody, right? So I can control what I can control. If you work for us, and I can control you, so if we're held up getting out of the ground, I can overcome that because I can work an extra day, or I can work longer, things like that. With FPL, it's just you gotta try to make sure that you are doing everything that you're supposed to do to get them to where they're supposed to be.
We only got the permanent electricity. We had the temporary, but the permanent electricity about a month ago, right? A month ago.
So we got the permanent in the end of June, and then we got all of the stack vaults like the first week of July. We were ready for power, so we turned everything over to FPL around between like December and January.
Right.
And then they had everything built out in their rooms come I think May they were done. Right. And then it just took a while to get it energized. So I mean, those guys do the best that they can. Yeah. They
also have hurricanes. You got a lot of problems in Florida.
Yeah. So
other projects and a lot of upgrading of systems that you need to upgrade now.
But that was probably the biggest challenge, I think, because if we would have not had that speed bump, we would be in a really, really good position. I mean, we would have.
So that's also that is the responsibility of the developer, but Moss Construction has a lot of impact and pushing, but basically.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this was kind of a unique scenario with it, as far as they had to bring power in from a pretty far. There's a substation like a block away. They had to come down from there. Some other projects, it's much closer, and sometimes we handle running the duct banks and things like that because it's closer to the site.
We also had a lot of turnover within FDL, personnel turnover.
Yeah, so just getting contact is
Moss
hard.
has its own, one of the advantages Moss has is its own FPL rep.
Yeah,
right,
so
that they can connect to.
so FPL assigns a rep to pretty much all contractors. We've been fortunate before that we have good ones,
Yeah.
and you know you build those relationships. Obviously, we do a lot of work down here, so you're kind of always communicating with them on different projects. But at the end of the day, they don't really treat us any different than they treat anybody else. Hopefully, you can and you do. It's just you never really know.
Let me ask you, Robert's famous saying is lessons learned. So we're trying to share information and knowledge with other real estate developers, potential developers, investors, anyone that involved in the real estate market wants to get information. So what would be your 3 lessons learned from your career as a builder with Moss that you would share or warn or teach anyone that wants to do anything with real estate development or building or renovating or flipping or anything that has to do with construction?
I think I have like a couple different like boxes I keep them in, right? Okay. So I think if you're like a young person and you're wanting to get into it, finding a mentor is super important because this industry is not that big. It's big, but it's not that big. You know, everybody knows each other. So finding the right person to guide you is super important.
Who's your mentor?
I've got a lot of them now. I mean, Andy's a huge one. You end up meeting different people on different jobs, and you take a little piece of them from everyone. I remember a guy, he's a general superintendent for us. You know, great guy. He's a huge mentor of mine, good friend of mine. His name's Tom Gonzalez. Just personable, a lot like Andy is too. And kind of teach you how to deal with those things. But finding a mentor is super important.
Okay.
And then if you're getting into it, just being there and being present and taking in as much knowledge as you can is important. And obviously not realizing that you always have something to learn. I think if you're getting into like development and things like that, it's just knowing that getting everybody pulling in the same direction, right? So I know for us, we don't refer to everybody as our business partners. We don't have subcontractors. They're our business partner. You're our business partner on this project. Design team's our business partner, but making sure that everybody's on that same page and everybody's pulling in the same direction, and that we're not in don't ever go into a situation where it's like you versus me. It's hey, we're all in this thing together. And I think if you always go into it with that mentality, you're set up for success.
Right, you're a team and everyone is in the same boat.
Yep. And then just, trying to get ahead of everything as much as you can early as far as design-wise and approvals and that type of stuff is super important. And then, hopefully you hire a good contractor and we put you in a position to be successful, but letting, this is what we do, so let us do it, we're always going to take everybody along for the journey,
I think one thing I learned from working in Moss of this project specifically is the quality of the plans, like the architectural, engineering plans, construction, or whatever, and just spending enough time to coordinate and make sure we went over all the little details that are in their plans, that they work together, because trying to change them on the move,
it's tough.
It's very expensive, time-consuming, frustrating.
Yeah, so I think kind of we were talking about technology earlier. One thing that we're doing now, and we've done it on a lot of projects, we didn't have it available to us on Rivr Lofts, but going through the virtual design process is super important. Like the design teams do it, and the engineers do it, but when we do it, we go through it from a constructability phase, and we're looking at it, pretty intimately because that's a project we're about to build for 2 years. We want to make sure we solve a lot of problems. So virtual design is super important, and it's a great tool that we have now. And as the industry changes, it's something we can keep using. But utilizing that and utilizing our resources.
You see more technology coming into the market?
Yeah, definitely.
Because technology is impacting so many industries.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it has to keep up. And then, kind of we're talking about between design and things like that, it gets more important because now we're looking at it from the partnership standpoint. Like if we're doing it, we're bringing all pieces together. So it's super important.
You prefer building condo buildings or apartment buildings? We're just talking about it.
So I've never done a condo,
Right.
but I like doing apartments. So I look at it, and from what my position is, from like the perspective of what's the best way, how can I actually finish something?
Yeah.
So like I built an airport before. So an airport's super hard to finish because you never can really close a door until you're walking out the doors. An apartment, I can finish. I can go to the 8th floor and say, okay, the 8th floor is done. Let's move on. So I like that. Condos, it's still a little bit of you don't have that because every condo is a little bit different and residents are gonna be a little bit different. So not having built a condo, I would say apartments I prefer, but only for that reason. You know, I think maybe the business-wise, from a contractor perspective, is maybe a little different. Condos obviously have different legal challenges and things like that than apartments do. But as far as pure construction, I would prefer an apartment.
So, how was your experience working with Moderno team and
I mean,
on this project?
the lunches are great. You know, no, it's been a great journey. I mean, you guys have been good partners.
It was a journey. Definitely was a journey, right?
Yeah, it's been a good journey, and we've developed, you know, relationships with you guys over the past 2 years on this deal, and I can definitely say it's been a unique dynamic. It's not often that, you know, we share an office with their own ALs and these guys, and it's so it's a little bit unique from that perspective. But it's been a great process. You guys have been good partners. You make sure we get paid, which is important, and you support us when we need you guys to support us on you know, working through issues and things like that. So
what's your next project right after that? You told me you're gonna go for a while. What's your next project?
Yeah, so plan right now is to go, we're obviously building a police station in Fort Lauderdale. We're building another one in Hollywood. So I'm gonna go there for, get that job finished.
Pull you out to our next project.
We'll see. You gotta get it. You gotta get it moving.
We're getting it.
Yeah, so there for the time being, but in construction, I never believe I'm going to build a project until I'm there, because you hear it all the time, and things change. It's such a fluid business.
You know what Chad told me, Chad Moss, was the winning sentence to go, let's get it done, let's get it fucking done, and let's enjoy the process.
That's right.
And let's have fun while we're doing it.
It's the best
and I was thinking about it when he told me that over tequila, and I'm thinking, but you know, I said it's simple, but it's genius. Yeah, that's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, we had some difficulties of changes, but I've enjoyed the process a lot. I've learned a lot. I think Rial also and Robert enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. Now we just got to get finished.
Yeah, by October 1.
Oh, come on. Come on. We'll get it done as fast as we can get it done.
All right.
You got me on.
I don't want to commit on a date. They're not trying to pull a.
Right now, you got me on camera. I can't do that. We'll get it to you as fast as we can. I think we're in a good spot. We'll get it
Luis
done.
also was your partner, the back office part, and the project manager did an amazing job right alongside you. Were you friends before? Or
No, I met Luis on this job. The only person I knew before we started this was Sebastian. So I've known Sebastian for a while.
Also a great guy.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Making time on your busy day.
I appreciate it. Thank you.